Modern Satanism is one of the most controversial, misunderstood, and culturally significant movements of the past century. To many, the word Satanism instantly evokes images shaped by horror movies, folklore, and religious fear, secret rituals, hidden cults, or worship of evil. Yet these imagined scenes have almost nothing to do with what modern Satanism stands for today. Modern Satanism has grown into a philosophical, symbolic, and often political movement rooted in ideas of personal freedom, rebellion against authoritarianism, and critical thinking. For most modern Satanists, Satan is not a literal being, but a metaphor for individualism, nonconformity, and opposition to arbitrary power. To understand how Satanism transformed from a religious villain into the centerpiece of a modern ideological movement, we must explore literature, cultural rebellion, social upheaval, media-driven panic, and the increasingly global demand for autonomy of belief. The rise of modern Satanism is not simply a religious story. It is a story about power, culture, identity, and the human desire to question authority. Long before anyone called themselves a Satanist, Satan already held symbolic power. In Jewish and Christian scripture, Satan is not originally a ruler of hell, but a challenger, an adversary. Over centuries, religious storytelling expanded this character into a cosmic villain opposing divine order. Yet as society evolved, writers began reinterpreting Satan. In the 17th century, English poet John Milton published Paradise Lost, a monumental epic that unintentionally reshaped Satan's meaning. Milton's Satan became a dramatic figure, eloquent, determined, and rebellious, declaring, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." This depiction influenced later writers of the Romantic movement, such as Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, who saw Satan not as a creature of evil, but as a symbol of the human spirit pushing against oppression. Satan came to represent freedom, defiance, and self-determination. This symbolic transformation laid the groundwork for a worldview where Satan could represent empowerment rather than evil. Thus, the cultural idea of Satan as a metaphor existed before modern Satanism became organized. Modern Satanism formally entered public life in 1966, when Anton Szandor LaVeyan founded the Church of Satan in San Francisco. LaVeyan was a showman, musician, and social observer who believed that traditional religions suppressed human impulses such as pleasure, curiosity, creativity, anger, and individual will. He argued that guilt-based morality encouraged people to feel ashamed of natural desires and instincts. LaVeyan presented Satan as a symbol of human freedom, not a deity. He published the Satanic Bible in 1969, which laid out the core philosophical principles of what became known as LaVeyan Satanism, including self-empowerment, celebrating personal goals and individual success, rational self-interest, acting in ways that benefit one's well-being, skepticism, rejecting supernatural claims without evidence, psychodrama, using ritual for emotional expression, not divine communication, rejection of blind obedience, encouraging critical thought rather than conformity. LaVeyan Satanism is explicitly atheistic. There is no literal Satan, no spirits, and no gods. Rituals serve as symbolic psychological practices, similar to meditation or performance therapy. The Church of Satan became a cultural force during a time when many were questioning authority, amid civil rights activism, sexual liberation, and the decline of rigid religious norms. Its bold imagery drew media attention, but its true influence came from offering a philosophical identity based on autonomy. From the late 1970s through the 1990s, the United States and parts of Europe experienced a wave of mass hysteria now known as the Satanic Panic. Talk shows, police trainings, and church groups claimed, without evidence, that satanic cults were kidnapping children, performing violent rituals, and secretly infiltrating society. This moral panic was fueled by sensationalized news media, evangelical fear campaigns, the rise of horror film culture, incorrect psychological theories of recovered memory, public anxiety about cultural change. Despite decades of investigations, no evidence of organized violent satanic cults was found. Yet the panic destroyed lives. Innocent people were imprisoned, families were torn apart, and public fear solidified the false idea that Satanism was inherently dangerous. Ironically, this backlash would later inspire a new wave of satanic identity, driven by people who opposed fear-based moral control. In 2013, a new organization emerged, the Satanic Temple, TST. While often confused with the Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple has a different mission and identity. It is a religious and political activist movement that uses Satan as a symbol of resistance against authoritarian control, particularly in matters involving law, education, and bodily autonomy. The Satanic Temple is also atheistic. Members do not believe in or worship Satan. Instead, Satan symbolizes the right to question power, the refusal to accept imposed belief, free will, personal dignity, and liberty. The Satanic Temple gained worldwide attention when it began legal challenges against governmental religious favoritism. For example, when certain regions displayed Christian monuments on public property, TST argued that either all religions must receive equal space or none should. This led to the creation of the Baphomet statue, not as an object of worship, but as a political equal rights symbol. The temple also introduced after-school Satan clubs promoting critical thinking, legal defenses of reproductive freedom, public demonstrations opposing religious encroachment into law. This transformed Satanism into a cultural movement advocating secularism, equality, and intellectual independence. Modern Satanism is bound not by shared belief in a deity, but by shared values, including individual freedom. Each person shapes their own identity. Critical thinking. Beliefs must be examined, not inherited. Personal responsibility. Actions define character, not doctrines. Empathy and consent. Respecting others' autonomy is essential. Opposition to tyranny. Any system that demands submission is questioned. Contrary to common assumptions, modern Satanism does not reject morality. Instead, it rejects absolute morality imposed by external authority, arguing that ethical choices must be made consciously, not obeyed blindly. The rise of modern Satanism reflects larger global trends. Decline of traditional religion. Many are leaving faiths that enforce moral guilt or social judgment. Rise of secularism. More people identify as atheist, agnostic, or spiritually independent. Demand for personal identity. Younger generations explore belief as self-expression rather than inherited tradition. Resistance to authoritarianism. Political climate has increased interest in philosophies that defend personal rights. Digital communities. The internet allows open discussion without fear of social punishment. For many who join, Satanism is not about rejecting goodness. It is about rejecting control. Modern Satanism influences art, fashion, film, music, social movements advocating equality, public discourse on religious freedom, academic discussions on morality and autonomy. Its presence forces society to confront deep questions. Who has the right to define morality? Should religion influence law? What does freedom of belief truly mean? Whether one agrees with Satanism or not, the movement continues to reshape cultural landscapes by challenging assumptions that have been unquestioned for centuries. The rise of modern Satanism is not a story of darkness, evil, or supernatural worship. It is a story of symbolism, philosophy, identity, and resistance. Satan, once portrayed solely as a mythic villain, has evolved into a metaphorical figure representing human autonomy and the courage to think freely. From literary rebellion to LaVeyan's philosophy to the political activism of the Satanic Temple, Satanism has transformed into a movement centered on self-determination, intellectual independence, and resistance to imposed authority. Modern Satanism continues to grow because it addresses a deeply human desire, the desire to define oneself. It is, at its core, a movement about freedom, the freedom to question, to choose, and to be.